Hi, everybody, and welcome to Intelligence Squared. I'm John Donvan, and in this program, we are debating the impact that one man is having on the future of an enterprise you have all heard of. That enterprise is called Twitter. And the man, I know you've heard of him, is Elon Musk. Boy, have we heard of him and from him, especially since he became sole owner of Twitter last fall, paying $44 billion for it, firing half of its employees, and vowing for the 230 million users of Twitter to make it better. His words, "Twitter has extraordinary potential. I will unlock it." So has Elon Musk done that? Or are the steps he's made so far a lot of missteps? That is what we are debating. To be more specific, the yes-no question, is Elon Musk killing Twitter? We recorded this one before a live virtual audience. You will not hear them, but just wanted you to know that they were there. So let's get to the debate, starting with my introduction of our two debaters. So let's meet our debaters. Arguing yes, Elon Musk is killing Twitter. Here is host of On with Kara Swisher, co-host of the podcast Pivot, and editor-at-large of New York Magazine, Kara Swisher.
Thank you.
And arguing no, that Elon Musk is not killing Twitter, we have the founder and managing partner of Skybridge, former White House communications director and host of the podcast Open Book, Anthony Scaramucci. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we start the debate, I'm interested in your personal connections to Elon Musk, because you both know him and you've both interacted with him. And we're just, as a matter of curiosity, want to sort of get a sense of how you know him. So Anthony, why don't you go first on that?
Well, one of my closest friends, Antonio Gracias, is on the board of two of his companies. So it would be SpaceX and Tesla. He was an early investor in PayPal. And so I'm going to say that I know Elon tangentially. We've interacted a few times over the years, but I don't have a personal relationship with Elon. Obviously, I'm very impressed with him as an investor and as a business executive.
And what about you, Kara?
Oh, I've known him since the last century, actually, when he was at a company called X.com. It was a startup. He had other startups. He had a sort of it was like a Yellow Pages directory company that he sold and made a little bit of money from, and then he moved on to X. And it was competing at the time with PayPal, and where they were quite big competitors. And I covered them for the Wall Street Journal. They merged and later sold to eBay. So I've known him for a very long time. And while the rest of them went off and did other things, he started investing in lots of interesting things like space and cars, which was unusual because everybody else was doing a dating service and something stupid with their money. And so he was doing some interesting things. So I knew him for a long, long time and covered him while he was building these companies, and have interviewed him, I don't know, dozens of times, and including many live appearances at some of my events. And we've texted and emailed over the years and stuff.
So for neither of you is he a distant figure. You both have some connection to him.
No.
So let's get to the debate itself. We'll go in 3 rounds, and our first round is going to be comprised basically of opening statements. And Kara Swisher, again, you are arguing yes in answer to the question, is he killing Twitter? So take 3 to 4 minutes to tell us why you're a yes.
Okay, I wrote something up, so I hope you don't mind. I think the question is not, is Elon killing Twitter, but is owning Twitter killing Elon, essentially, at least the brand, which I think has seen more deterioration in the last 6 months than anyone I can think of. In doing so, he's created the perfect storm of self-inflicted harm. He's shot himself in the foot, and then the other foot, and then he went back to the first foot. And while it'd be easy to focus solely on his demented daily tweets, spewing homophobic misinformation to bear-hugging despicables, to firing people with the stylings of the very worst of robber barons, I think the only thing you can do here is follow the money, which I'm going to focus on. First of all, he blew up a stable $5 billion ad business in a few months. It wasn't that good, but it was still $5 billion, losing huge opportunities like the World Cup and the holiday season. So the site's ad experience is now like 2 a.m. On cable with a series of grifty ads and come-ons, and more porn than ever, which some people might like. He adopted, number 2, he adopted misguided advice from one of his dumber minions to focus the company on an enterprise software company. It's failed to launch anything stable or enable not to troll corporate clients. You saw that when they did Twitter Blue and everybody faked companies. He's gotten himself into class action lawsuits and how he cloddishly handled the firing of Twitter employees. As former Twitter Blue head Tony Hale wrote, New York's hottest club Club is a Zoom call with the lawyers for the Twitter class action suit. It will be a drag on him and all his companies, even if he throws lawyers at it, as he always tends to do. He's been involved in lots of lawsuits over the years. This is a big one. He's allowed the conversation to get uglier by allowing 60,000 of the very worst to return to Twitter, to wait for it, improve the conversation. That's akin to Voldemort letting all the prisoners out of Azkaban prison. He said he would make decisions for these different people via a council, which doesn't exist, never happened, and it turns out it's just him late at night mainlining Cheetos, Ozempic, and conspiracy theories. So a group of managers making decisions managers are paid to make has been replaced by essentially one guy. According to internal sources, usage has started to decline among active users, which make up a small part of the population and a large percentage of the tweets. Mine, for example, have gone from a couple hours a day to under one, and it's declining every single day. I only use it for marketing and nothing else now, which is a platform I used rather actively, including where I met Anthony Scaramucci, where I trolled him for quite a lot of time. And he is such a good sense of humor that he allowed me to do so, and we've become, I think, friends in some way. It's allowed competitors to emerge, like Mastodon, which has been compared to a waiter handing you a gun, pointing at a cow and saying, "Get dinner." So he's given lots of opportunity for a number of competitors to get in here when Twitter could have dominated here with someone like Elon at the top. Speaking of nothing burgers, the Twitter files. 9, he's taking other businesses with him. Tesla has owned a lion's share of the electric light vehicle registrations in the U.S., according to a number of different measurement services, but that's down 79% in 2020. There's a surge of competition, including lower price models. One Wedbush Securities person wrote, Musk must take a more hands-on approach in 2023 at the company, as the Twitter distraction, along with the current demand situation, it's falling off, is a perfect storm for the stock. Tesla stock is down 70%. Even though it is way ahead in EV production, in batteries, it has 4 plants globally. All kinds of competitors are now. He's leaving it open to competitors to launch models from Lucid and others. He's certainly trying to do so, but his eye is definitely off the ball there, and they're facing the more competition they've ever had in a really bad economic environment. And lastly, follow the money. Let me read from Bill Cohen. He just wrote a piece yesterday about this. The banks, Morgan Stanley and Bank of America, will be reporting what it's doing with the debt it has, the $13 billion in debt. And what the banks will be revealing, if I'm right, this is according to Bill Cohen, is that thanks to the demand of the Federal Reserve, Wall Street's prudential regulator, the Twitter bank debt has been marked on the books of both Morgan Stanley and Bank of America at 50 cents on the dollar. That means the $13 billion of Twitter debt is now worth about half that amount, or $6.5 billion, thanks to a combination of rising interest rates and Twitter's shrinking EBITDA, as well as questions about whether Elon will be able to make roughly $600 million of interest payment due on the Twitter bank debt in April. And following the logic here, if the bank debt is only worth half its face amount, it has now been recorded as such. It means Twitter equity, which is owned mostly by Elon and a bunch of his rich friends, is virtually wiped out after a mere 2 months under Elon's rule. To put it bluntly, this is an astounding and virtually unprecedented outcome in the world of leveraged buyouts. But he is doing something about income inequality, I guess. Anyway, that's my...
Thanks, Kara Swisher. And now the no answer comes from Anthony Scaramucci. Anthony, it's your turn.
Well, I'll start out by saying that if the definition of friendship is that you can be critical of somebody and still like and enjoy their personality, then we are definitely friends, Kara, because you have been very critical of me, and I do like and enjoy your personality. And I will say this, you've made my life more interesting as a result of our relationship. But I think the specific question is Twitter dying, yes or no? And I'm going to say no for several reasons. And the main reason is something that Warren Buffett has said long ago about businesses. If it's a high-quality business, even a very bad management team or bad decisions, the high-quality business can endure. He'll take the high-quality business any day. And I think the facts are indisputable about Twitter being a high-quality business in the following sense. It is a pervasive part of our zeitgeist now. It is the town square, proverbially. And I think there are more active users today. If you look at their their numbers. This is an important metric for social media, as we both know. In addition to that, things happen on Twitter. The interaction, the FTX debacle as an example, a lot of microjournalists uncovered nuances to that story on Twitter. The World Cup, while not advertising there, and we'll get into the advertising in a second, lots of the drama that played out in social media related to the World Cup happened on Twitter. And of course, most recently, the Damar Hamlin situation in the NFL, which my heart goes out to him and his family, and seems that he's doing well, also happening on Twitter. So I think it's indisputable that we're talking more about Twitter as a result of Elon Musk, and the user base is up. You and I both know Twitter Spaces, pretty effective medium today, sort of replace Clubhouse, if you will. When Elon's on Twitter Spaces, there could be upwards to 100,000 people in that town square listening and potentially asking questions. So you are bringing up things, though, that I think are true. And so I do want to validate those things. I think you said once on CNN, I was watching, that he may have spent $44 billion for a $7 billion company. That may or may not be true. I think the financials, if they're marking down the debt, certainly people believe that there's a deterioration in the financials. And both of us know, because of our years of experience either on Wall Street or in journalism, that large-scale corporations are typically risk-averse, and they certainly don't want to be caught in a negative spotlight. And there's something that Elon Musk is doing right now that would cause those people to pull away. And I just want to spend 1 minute on it, and then we'll go back to the debate. And that is our discussion in the zeitgeist about free speech. Ultimately, you're either a believer in free speech or not. I know that you are a believer. You know I am. I once worked for a president of the United States that called the press the enemy of the people. Of course, I had to write an op-ed in the Hill responding to that, saying, Mr. President, the press is not, in fact, the enemy of the people, but what free speech actually does for our society is not only keeps our politicians honest, but it creates economic innovation.
More from Intelligence Squared US when we return. Welcome back to Intelligence Squared US. Let's get back to our debate.
We teach our second grade children that they can think and speak freely. They go on to create Facebook and Twitter and Google and Apple Computer. In societies where that free speech is suppressed, where they're not allowed to talk about their government or certain potential dramatic things that are going on in the society, they get curtailed, and they end up stealing our intellectual property rights. So for me, what Elon Musk is doing by opening it up, you mentioned 60,000 criminals coming out of the asylum. I think we got a big problem in our society right now. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood, a lower middle-class neighborhood, and I can tell you there's a very large group of people in our society now that feel left out. And if you're going to shut those people off on Twitter or shut those people off on other realms of social media, I think that's very long-term damaging. If anything, we have to embrace those people and figure out a way to bring them back into the social contract. And I think Elon Musk is trying to do that. I see him as a radical moderate, by the way, self-described in terms of my conversations with him. And I think it's early. We'll have to see how this thing plays out, but it's far from dead. In fact, if anything, it's more vital than ever. And over the next 6, 12, 36 months, I think we'll see really good progress ahead for Twitter.
Anthony, I have a very quick question of clarification. When you say you think Twitter is more vital than ever, are you saying it's more necessary than ever, or are you saying it's more thriving than ever?
Well, I think it's a combination. Certainly advertising revenue, corporate advertising revenues are down. The business itself has been impaired. But if you look at social media data in terms of the usage and the vibrancy of the network, that in fact is up. And so it's a mixed bag. But yes, okay. I do believe it's more vital than ever. And I think he's going to figure it out. I think it's very early in the process of him taking the company over.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. So thanks to both of you for your opening statements. And what I think I hear are two kinds of arguments about what we mean by the survivability and the viability of Twitter. One is an argument for the business, for the numbers and the direction that's taking, and the other is a description of Twitter's vitality and vibrancy, having to do with its place in the culture and its relevance, its appeal to people as a place to continue to go to as a kind of public square as it's been described. So those are two different framings. They do overlap, but I want to separate them just for the start of the conversation and start with the business argument that you made, Kara. Kara, do you anticipate this company being on the road to bankruptcy? Is it that extreme?
Well, he's talked about it himself. I'm not the one to say it. Who knows if he's telling the truth when he says that, because he often just spouts out something just to cause, Anthony should know about this, just to say something to cause a news cycle to happen. So he's talked about bankruptcy. I don't believe it will be bankrupt because he's one of the world's richest people. He's not. I don't believe he's the world's richest man anymore because of what's happening here. But I do think that he has plenty of rich friends who will save him from disaster. But he does have to come up there at some point. You don't love throwing good money after bad, but he will come up with money over the next year at least to pay off these bank debts. I think the danger is that this bank debt goes on Wall Street and it's bought up by an Apollo or someone else who are much tougher on. They don't want to have lunch with Elon Musk, as other rich people, as you noticed in the text, tend to want to do, including Sam Bankman-Fried, who wanted to sort of hang out with Elon. So I think it depends on who gets a hold of this thing. If he's unable to, if this debt goes on the market, and if he's unable to pay his debt obligations. See, I don't think the latter is going to happen, but he certainly puts himself at risk. That said, he could buy the debt himself and throw more of his money at this thing and then own it completely. So there's ways that he can keep it in business. It's just it never was a very good business, and now it's a really bad business. And as to Anthony's thing about vitality, it's a very small business, even though it gets the attention of the media and politicians. Most people do not live their lives on Twitter. And so it's a very small business that has a very outsized profile because of the users who are on it. Anthony, your response to that?
Well, again, so, I always want to be fair to Kara and the facts. I think she's right about the size and scale of the business. Listen, I think Kara has 1.4 million Twitter followers. I have 1 million Twitter followers. I am on Twitter. I do look at it. I do scroll through it, and I sometimes tweet. I think it would be impossible, and she would have to answer this better than me as a journalist, but I think most journalists would find it to be relatively impossible not to have access to that site because there are things that are going on. Kara will remember this. There was someone in Pakistan that basically said on Twitter, I hear the rumblings of helicopter. There seem to be aircraft over my house. Shortly thereafter, Osama bin Laden's house was invaded. And so there's relevancy to Twitter. Again, going back to the original premise, is Twitter dying or not? We can debate whether it's a large or small business. We can debate whether or not Elon Musk has impaired the business. But is it dying or not? I'm going to take the position that no, it is not dying. Even if Elon Musk were to leave the business and we were to write a story about the abject failure of his management team, I think Twitter goes on to live. And I think Twitter has found its niche in the society where celebrities are on there, politicians are on there, average users are on there to gather information and to learn.
And you think that position is somewhat ironclad. You think that's unassailable. That can't be changed by anything.
Nothing in our lives, unfortunately, is unassailable. But I do think that this has levels of resiliency as a result of the organic nature of Twitter over the last 15-ish years.
On that, Anthony, I have a couple words for you. AIM, AOL, Yahoo, MySpace. You ever heard of Yo, excuse me? Yo, Peach. It goes on and on and on. And now, unfortunately, the conversation has moved away from Twitter, and so that it was a small conversation. It never took advantage of the opportunities it had because of a lot of reasons. It was badly managed before, but now it's sort of malevolently managed, and so it's trying to take a business that it had and change it into something else. It is, you don't want to use a rocket thing, but he's building the rocket in flight, and he's also doing things that are causing the rocket to go the other direction, which is downward. And so you wonder how these decisions are being made and who they're being made by. And it turns out it's just literally one guy. And so that's a real problem when you don't have a team.
Why down? What do you mean by downward?
Well, I think, you don't kill all. I'm perplexed as to why you would insult advertisers when you have a very, an okay advertising business is certainly tiny in comparison.
Remind listeners what exactly you're referring to.
He started tweeting. Well, it was so random and so abrupt each time. Is when he got there, he started insulting advertisers and told them essentially they weren't un-American not to. I think that was one of them. He had lied. There's so many. It's like Trump. There's so many. I don't remember the last one he did, but he basically insulted advertisers and said they were woke if they didn't advertise on Twitter. It seems to me that they would advertise on Satan.com if it would sell them a Fitbit. I feel like advertisers will go anywhere. And so he insulted them, and then they got him on a call with advertisers where he seemed to have been somewhat medicated in some fashion, where he was somewhat nice to them. And then the very next day, he insulted them again. And so a lot of these people, they really don't want controversy. They just want to sell things. And they're not woke. They're capitalists. He did that with a number. He's doing that very Trump-like in insulting people. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense why he's doing it. And maybe Anthony can talk to this because he's been with someone who does that. It is a strategy to do that on some level, is to create chaos almost continually. So you take away, it's sort of jazz hands in a weird way.
All right, so let me just respond to the AOL, MySpace. If we're taking that standard, then listen, everything, the Roman Empire, you pick
the Roman Empire.
We can go. I mean, it did decline, Cara. So what we do
I read that.
And General Electric, who had started in the Dow, I think it was out of the Dow for a few years in the 1920s, and was the longest tenured Dow member, is no longer part of the Dow. So we do know that none of these businesses are eternal. I guess what I'm saying is, in the next half a decade to decade, is Twitter dying? I think it's not dying. I think, if anything, it will become more relevant. And I think ultimately, as he executes this plan, and whatever the erratic nature is of his personality, we can go back to the situation with Elon Musk in 2008, where he was on the verge of bankruptcy in two companies, SpaceX and Twitter. He was able to use his guile, his relationships, to save those two companies. Those two companies propelled him to be the richest person in the world. We just went through one of the worst market environments in 50 years. At least the first half of 2022 was the worst since 1970. The entire year was the worst that we've had in the stock market since 2008. The NASDAQ, as we both know, was down 30%. So Elon Musk's high growth Tesla stock down a lot. No surprise to me. If you're going to make the case that it's down even more as a result of his erratic behavior, if Elon Musk was listening to this and he asked me that as a friend, I would say, yes, it is. You've got to figure out a way to comport yourself better. You don't want to be accused of being Donald Trump by anybody. Just trust me, it's not a good comparison, because ultimately anybody that worked for Donald Trump knows about the insanity and knows about the instability. And so Elon Musk is a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant visionary. You certainly know him better than me.
Well, let me jump in
Let me
on
just finish this one sentence.
Ahead, yeah.
When I step back and look at his vision for the company, despite whatever missteps he's having right now, I'm making the bet on Elon Musk. This could be 2008, SpaceX and Tesla.
What is that actual vision? Because a lot of these things he's doing, listen, I had been very critical of Twitter for years and had suggested subscriptions. We've suggested something that was more of a value proposition that you could pay for that would be worth it, like Amazon Prime is. I certainly pay for it. I'm very happy paying for it because it's worth it to me. A lot of his ideas are retreads of ideas that lots and lots of people have had, and he's unable to execute on any of these ideas. And everyone, because he's Elon Musk, thinks he's a genius, and therefore because he's good at rockets and cars, which are physical and have physical aspects, that he's going to be fantastic at media. Media is hard. And this is a media company. And so I think it's a very different situation. He's got to find another business or sell something that's worthwhile in order to make it a business.
So, Kara, that goes to the...
Or else it's just a plaything for a rich person.
Kara, you're somewhat answering the question I was going to ask both of you, because Anthony was kind of alluding to this, that he has been highly unpredictable in the choices he made in terms of businesses to take on and the ways that he did that. And the question was going to be, could this be one more case of that it's looking sort of erratic at the moment, but he's pivoting. Obviously, he's floated ideas like the blue check mark and then pulled it off and then put it back again, that he's responding to mistakes quickly, that's kind of his way. And that there's something about him, this thing that you referred to as the genius, that I think you think is overrated, but nevertheless it's there.
I don't think it's overrated. I think it's just you assume because someone is good. It's like saying I'm going to be good at basketball because I'm good at journalism. It's just not the same. I'm not good at basketball, by the way. But, it's just one of these things that we just take it as for granted. Steve Jobs, who really, truly was a visionary, stayed in his lane and kept expanding from that. Now, he certainly said controversial things over the years. Mostly his biggest, compared to Elon Musk, he parked badly. That's really pretty much the controversy around Steve Jobs. There's a bunch of them. But one of the things that he stayed within his lane and you understood the daisy chain of what he was doing. Here, it's erratic. Let Kanye West on, kick him off, do this, do that. And everything is hypocritical to everything else. And so it becomes exhausting. Twitter was already exhausting. Now I find I am a very heavy Twitter user. My numbers are going down from, again, a couple hours a day to an hour a day.
Why is that?
To 6 minutes. Because it's exhausting. I turned off comments on Twitter because I suddenly started I put up something around the shooting in Colorado, and I got the most repulsive group of comments, which I'd never gotten, and I don't need it.
Anthony,
I don't have the time.
Are you still tweeting as before?
Yeah, yes. I mean, the answer is just I'm tweeting as before. I'm probably, I get yelled at by my wife staring at my phone too much, so I'm probably not looking at it as much as I used to. But I think Kara's bringing up an interesting point about a circle of competence, and if you're inside the circle of competence, you do way better, and if you're outside the circle of competence, you may do less better. And so I just want to validate something that she's saying, because she is right about the media is quite different, because you get an image in the media. It is very hard to change or turn that image. Okay, and so the media, the mainstream establishment media, has declared a personal foul on Elon Musk and a personal foul on Twitter. Okay, why are they doing that? That's what you have to ask yourself the question of. Are they doing that because he's bringing back controversial characters, whether it's Michael Flynn, Carpe Dumpkin, Donald Trump? Is that the reason why they're doing it? Are they doing it because they don't like his personality and some of the things that he's saying? Okay, and I think, again, if I was on Elon's board, what I would be saying to him, hey, listen, it is a little bit different than rockets, and it's a little bit different than cars, because if you're in the media business, whether you like it or not, the media is going to have a say about your business. You're going to have a constant slew of critics analyzing and critiquing your business. But you guys asked about the vision. Let me just give it in less than a minute. Because I did read through the PowerPoint presentation, and through Kathy Wood's fund, I just should also point this out, I am an investor, although it's a very small amount of money in Kathy Wood's fund that's been directed towards Twitter. The vision for the company, and Kara may say this is a retread, but I at least find it interesting that he wants to broaden the base of the social media. He wants to be more inclusive as it relates to the free speech dynamic. And he eventually wants to create a super app, which is somewhat similar to WeChat, where you could have a payment structure going through Twitter, and you could have other things going on inside of Twitter in terms of way more robust WhatsApp-like communication. And so when I look at all those different things, and I look at the installed base of Twitter, if he gets that right, and he calms people down,
let me just jump in for, I want to jump in for a point of clarification, Anthony, because you've been arguing that against the argument that Twitter is dying. What we're really arguing is whether Musk's impact on Twitter is good or bad for it, is driving it to higher or lower places. So,
well, temporarily, it's driving it lower. I think Kara is right about that. Again, the question was, is it Twitter dying? I'm saying no, it's not dying.
No, the question is Musk killing Twitter?
Is Musk killing Twitter? Musk is temporarily hurting Twitter. Okay. But I believe that Musk will be an agent for formidable positive change.
When he wrote his letter to the board last year, he wrote, "Twitter has extraordinary potential. I will unlock it." Right. Do you think he is unlocking potential there now, Anthony?
But you see, this is the problem with our society. Okay, you talk about technology. We're in 100,000-year-old pieces of machinery that haven't evolved in 100,000 years. My iPhone went from 1 to 14 in 15 years, but we think linearly. So right now, if he's not doing well, we think that's going to be the permanent state. The same way we thought in 2008 that Tesla and SpaceX were going out of business.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. I want to take that very point to Kara.
Tesla's not out of Tesla is buoyed by this stock that is way out of line with the other stocks, and there are competitors now catching up to him. He's still ahead. Let me be clear. They're still way ahead, but it's like Netflix, right as Disney and others started to get involved in streaming.
But Kara, I'm making the point that Tesla looked like it was out of business in 2008.
Yes, but making those comparisons aren't the same thing. Let me just say, when you say super app, let me give you guess what the super app is? TikTok right now. New apps will come in and do this. Super apps have never worked in this country. It works in China. It has never worked in this country. Do you trust Elon Musk with your payments money? I don't. I would trust Apple with it. I would trust Amazon with it way before I would do that. Each of these companies has tried to do a super app or is doing a version of it. It's another retread idea that is very difficult to pull off because you need people behind you. You need to build this stuff. You have to get people using it. Let me just tell you, young people are not flocking to Twitter to use their super app, and they're not going to. They're using Snapchat for communications. They're using TikTok for entertainment. They're using Facebook
is that
less
Musk's
and less.
fault, though? Is that Musk's fault?
No, it's just the state of competition. Now he's in a state of competition in cars where GM, Ford, Mercedes, Volkswagen, everybody is in now the business, and now they're not doing as well as Tesla, but they will do as well as Tesla.
This is Intelligence Squared US. More debate in a moment. Welcome back to Intelligence Squared US. I'm John Donvan. Let's get back to our debate. I want to go to the point that, Anthony, you made in your opening. You said as sort of a side point about the fact that Musk is saying that he wants to restore free speech to the platform, critical of some of the people who were taken down. Kara obviously describing them as 60,000 deplorables coming back to the site. But the fact is that...
Despicables.
Despicables, I apologize. I want to talk about its impact as we head into a new election cycle, where Twitter is in this process, where we are, and what Musk's challenge will be in moderating or not moderating. He's obviously not a free speech absolutist because even since he's taken over, he's kicked people or suspended people over the platform for criticizing him and for impersonating him. So just how free speechy is he really, Anthony? Where does that take us in, the role of Twitter in our political cycle right now?
You're the moderator, and you're supposed to be impartial and indifferent to the question, but you're fortifying me right now, and so I just want to caution you about that, because what you're basically saying is the upcoming election, Twitter is going to have this unbelievable influence in the upcoming election, and I obviously believe that it will. And so here we are 18 months from now, Twitter will be very vibrant and a very big part of the upcoming election.
Oh, you're saying I'm taking your side?
You're making my point.
Okay.
You're making my point, John, that Twitter is not dying. So I just want you to go back to your impartial position that you are supposed to be in. But I thank you for making the point.
Well done. Well played, Anthony.
But here we are right now where we're discussing this, okay? And so there's big problems, okay? We all know that there's robotic technology on Twitter. We know there's Russian and Chinese and other state adversarial disinformation on Twitter. We know that there's got to be a cleanup of that. And we also know that there's electioneering that's done on Twitter that's loaded with this information. Look at this guy, George Santos, as an example. He's almost the apotheosis now of the great lie being manifested into an individual. But here's what I would say to everybody listening, okay? We are a free speech country. It was grounded in free speech for a lot of different reasons, but the main one would be for all of us to be free. And a result of which, when you're in a free speech country, you do have qualifications. We do know the case law about free speech. Hate speech is not protected. A threat to the public is not really protected. The debate about yelling fire in the theater would be an example of that. So we know that there has to be guardrails on free speech. Now, you brought up the fact that Elon Musk doesn't like people being critical of him, and so he took some of them off the platform and he deplatformed them. But if you remember, it was a temporary deplatform. I think one thing we can say about Elon Musk, and maybe Carol will agree or disagree, but when he gets things wrong, good entrepreneurs, typically when they get something wrong, they don't stay girded.
Anthony, why get it wrong in the first place? It just seems like the peak of a man at night who had too much sugar.
Okay,
that's what happened.
That may be the case. And I ceded those points to you that there's some managerial erraticism that's going on. And you are right about that. But I'm talking about the broader point about the vitality of Twitter and what will Twitter look like in 2024 and 2028, et cetera. And I also bring up the point is, even with the erratic behavior, does Elon Musk manifestly get things right? Is he a value generator for his investors and for himself? And you've made the point, yes, in rockets, yes, in cars, but likely not in the media.
Anthony, let me jump in because I want to.
I'll make the point that I think he'll make it in the media as well. Anthony, I want to return
to the point you were making, that his commitment to make it very blunt, to allow people like Donald Trump back in after they were suspended, and others who's
not coming,
who you said were in your communities, that there's a sort of disconnect and disaffection with the wokeness that you said was to some degree, you feel influencing the decisions that Twitter made prior to Musk's takeover. And I want to know, is the return of those individuals and I'm not sure if I'm characterizing how you would put it correctly, but the broadening of the spectrum of allowed speech on the site going to be one of the things that he makes better about Twitter?
I hope so. But let me say this to you, okay, John? And I got this wrong. Donald Trump got it right, so you should really listen. I grew up in an aspirational blue-collar family. 35 short years later, those very same families, they went from economically aspirational to economically desperational. Okay, and we've left them out of the story, and they're very angry about it. And somebody like Donald Trump saw that, and he became an avatar for their anger. Now, he didn't offer any policy solution for them. But when he was sticking a finger in the eye of the media establishment, the political establishment, the business establishment, they loved it. And I'm just making the point that if you want a fairer, better, broader society, we have to get those people back into the fray.
Anthony,
we just have to do that.
Those people aren't on Twitter. They're not using Twitter. Look at the recent election, rife with election denialism on that platform, on Twitter and many other platforms. What did the voters do? They didn't vote for that. They voted out those people, the people that were screaming. Carrie Lake screams on Twitter. Didn't work for her. Michael Flynn screams wherever he happens to be. Didn't work for him. So I don't think it has an impact because I don't think these people are using the platform.
Karen, then you just made my argument even better then, because you're just saying that those people, them being brought back on Twitter, somebody like Michael Flynn is not really having that big of an impact.
Now it isn't, because it's a tired product. But that's what I'm arguing, is that it's a product that's now noisy.
I want to beat these
angry.
people. I want to beat these people in the free marketplace of ideas. I want to beat Michael Flynn or Donald Trump in the free marketplace of ideas. You brought out that Donald Trump's not back on Twitter. He's not for a specific reason. He's getting paid on Truth Social not to be back on Twitter.
We're wandering a little bit now from the topic of whether Musk is killing Twitter. And I have to break in, Anthony, because we need to move along to bring in some members of the press and media to join the conversation now. So I want to welcome Stephen Levy. Thanks for joining us. Tell people who you are, and then enter the conversation, please, with a question.
Yeah, hi. This fascinating debate. I'm editor-at-large at Wired magazine. I've been writing about technology for a long time, following Twitter for a long time. And so first for Kara. To me, we ask, is Elon killing Twitter? As a Twitter user, I'm super concerned about whether this is going to still be usable for me. And throughout Twitter's history, it really has been the users to shape how Twitter works. They invented all kinds of stuff like the reply or the retweet and other things. And I'm wondering whether Twitter, despite Elon, might not be some sort of cockroach where the users can figure out how to get around whatever mischief he does and erosions he does to the platform. So I'm wondering, how do you respond to say, look, as a user, there's a way I can kind of like fix who I follow and other things change to make that happen.
I think you can do that, sure. But because, like a lot of products, from using stuff, I have a box full of products that I used to use that I don't use anymore. A lot of physical products, a lot of software products that just became either onerous or difficult or something better came along. And so I do think you can sit there and fiddle with it. But one of the dirty secrets of Twitter for media people, as you may know, as I know, having run sites, is that it doesn't really give you much business. And one of the reasons you want to use this is so that you get people to listen and read what you're doing, maybe virtue signal to other journalists of what you're up to and things like that. But in general, if I had to look at the stuff which actually got me money, like made money as a journalist, it was always Apple Podcasts, for example, references from them, or Facebook or LinkedIn. Twitter was always way down on that scale. And so the question is, do you realize suddenly that you're putting way too much work into something that doesn't give something back? And I do think the more exhausting it gets and the easier that other competitors make things that are attractive, the more you move to them. It's the same thing with cars. As there's more choices for Tesla's market share is going to inevitably and should go down because people, don't want the Tesla look. They want to be in a Porsche. They want to be in a Chevy Bolt. They want to have a lesser price of something. And so I think he's opening it up to other competitors in a lot of ways, and he's made the experience more difficult to use. And why would you want to do workarounds? He himself said it. He said it to advertisers that day when he was nice to advertisers. He said, if you do use it for an hour and you feel bad, why would you come to that product? Exactly.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. And you want to had a question also for Anthony.
Yeah. Another thing that's been going on in Twitter for a long time is early in its time, when it first began to take off, it was sort of an assumption that they would get 1 billion users, right? Which is really what it takes for a social media site to break through and become successful more than what Kara says is an okay business. Now, they've never been able to do that. And it seems to me that what Elon is doing by, sort of arguing for his subscriptions, which is a great way to kill the number of people you have, basically creating this privileged class, which is going to flood your timeline. If you don't pay $8, you're not getting the whole experience. It seems to me between that and the things he does, which people just don't like and make your timeline more toxic, it's going to be even tough to keep what he has now, let alone build up to that 1 billion, which would make it a successful enterprise. How do you answer that?
It's one or the other, right? He's either a cockroach where he's going to survive the nuclear blast or these types of things. So I'm just saying, to me, maybe he's just an upsetting cockroach. Ultimately, what you're looking at is a short-term window of Elon Musk's behavior as owner of Twitter. And I'm saying to you, if you look at Elon Musk's past behavior as owner of SpaceX and Tesla, there were near-death experiences of both those great companies, and he was able to figure it out and execute bold and grand visionary strategies for those companies. The question before us right now is Elon Musk killing Twitter? And I'm saying Elon Musk may be hurting Twitter in the short term, but I think long term, if you look at his management skill set and his capability, he is going to regrow and create great vibrancy in Twitter. I'm saying three things. I'm saying that the business is incredibly durable. I see that to Kara, that it's smaller than he would like it to be, but it's incredibly durable. Number two, it's very relevant. We're already talking about 2024. And number three, his track record is such that I do not want to bet against him. And I believe he's going to create this free intellectual marketplace of ideas that's growing and very vibrant. It may not become the super app that he wants, but I bet you it could become a super boyish app as opposed to a super mannish app, and I'm betting on him.
I want to bring in Monica Melton also to jump in with the question. And can you tell folks who you are, and go for it?
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Melton, a senior tech editor at Insider Business, formerly Business Insider. Cara, you nicely laid out how Twitter may be killing Elon. While Anthony, you mentioned Elon sort of leveraging relationships to propel himself after 2008. But do either of you think Elon's reputation, not only as a techno king, but as a business person in general, is being irreparably harmed by the chaos he's created at Twitter? How does he realistically come back from this moment?
Well, I don't think anyone's irreparably harmed in this society, honestly. I mean, look, Bill Gates used to be Darth Vader, and now he's the biggest giver of philanthropy. I think people can recover their reputation, and there's a whole lot of forgiveness around certain business behavior. I mean, there's certain people that aren't. Harvey Weinstein's not coming back, but lots of people can. So I don't think it's irreparable. I just think that why do it? You know, he sort of styled himself after Iron Man, right? That's what he was trying to go for here. And I think that's a very pleasant way to think of him. And I think a lot of stuff he's done, as I've said time and again, is visionary and really interesting. That said, there's something happening here. There's some demons that follow this guy that he has to create controversy and contrarianism just for the sake of it. And I don't know his personal life. I don't know what's going on. But one of the people I interviewed who worked for him, Yoel Roth, said it was, when you deal with him 90% of the time, it used to be very reasonable. And I think Anthony's right. It was very reasonable and interesting and sometimes odd things. He'd say odd things off the top of his head. And then 10% of it was really quite mad, like angry for no reason, overly sensitive to criticism. That part seems to have grown enormously, unless it's all a performative act. And the other part seemed to have died down. I wish he had just stuck with the part that made him that way. He was the one most capable of doing this. And what he's doing now makes no sense to me. And it's turned his brand into something that's really unattractive. It's having impact on Tesla. It's having impact on lots of things.
I have to call for time. We're going to wrap up this round. I want to thank Stephen and Monica for joining us in the conversation. And our final round, you each get 90 seconds to summarize your position or move it forward on why you're a yes or why you're a no. Anthony, I'm going to let you go first. You're the no on the question of whether Elon Musk is killing Twitter. So take 90 seconds, please.
Well, I'd probably take less than 90 seconds because I think I've made my points, and I'll make three last ones. We'll be looking at Twitter for the 2024 election. We certainly will be looking at what candidates are writing on Twitter, and we'll be looking for what journalists are potentially reporting or getting out onto Twitter first, because that seems to be a medium of delivery for journalists that are trying to break stories. Number two, I do believe Elon Musk is a very successful and very effective executor and manager. And despite his current erraticism, I think he's going to self-correct. And I think he's going to find his way to making that Twitterverse, if you will, better. And the last point, I think it's the most important point. You can call it the cockroach theory or whatever you want to call it. This is a durable business. It may be smaller than he wants it to be, but it's a durable business, and it can take a lot of hits before it, quote unquote, gets killed off. So Elon Musk is not killing Twitter. If anything, we'll be looking at Twitter in the 2024 presidential election.
I'm sure we'll be looking at I think the politicians will be the last people out the door to turn out the lights there. They're narcissistic and they get to yell at each other. It's a perfect medium for that. The question is it an actually good product? And it is not as good a product as it was. And they have no signs of showing anything that's valuable to a vast majority of people, except for political journalists and politicians. And increasingly, celebrities are coming off of it. Journalists that don't have anything to do with politics are coming off of it. It's become somewhat of an amusement. Now it's become a more toxic amusement. It's like sort of watching stuff or eating stuff that isn't very good for you. At some point, you sort of feel sick doing it. He's got to make it a great product. That's the only way out of this, as it is with most things. If it's not a great product, it, like all the other products, will die, as every other tech product has died over time. We're not using all those things because either something better came along or the product just wasn't as good, it wasn't as enjoyable, wasn't as relevant. You have to be relevant to a vast amount of people to be successful. And when you say you can't do that, whatever you think of the Chinese ownership of TikTok, it's an incredibly enjoyable product. It's really fun to use. It's addictive. It's interesting. It's creative. And he's got to do those things. Instead, he wastes his time in some sort of weird personal vendetta against himself. That's really what's so sad about it, is that I sometimes feel like I feel like some days he just needs a hug so he can stop doing this and actually make something beautiful. He has done it in the past. He's absolutely capable of it. I'm not so sure media is as easy as building a rocket. I know it sounds crazy, but he's got to really stop the nonsense and make a product that's worth it to people and worth paying for. It's a very basic thing of capitalism. This is not about wokeism. This is not about the mind virus and all his other tiresome petty grievances against people. It's about making a great product and making a product that people want to pay for or use in some way that's enjoyable to them. And it's as easy as that. And so, and by the way, tech is the young eats its old. What's coming next is what's going to be the cool thing, not Twitter. Twitter's had enough lives, and we'll see if he can transform it for a little while longer, but it's not going to be much longer.
And that concludes our debate. And not only did I really, really enjoy this conversation, but the way that the two of you conducted it totally embodies what we aim for when we do these debates. The fact that the two of you could disagree and still be so not just respectful but amicable with one another. We appreciate that you did homework on this and that you came and you actually listened to one another. So thank you very much for being part of this debate with us.
It was an honor to be here, John. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Intelligence Squared, made possible by a generous grant from the Laura and Gary Lauder Venture Philanthropy Fund. As a nonprofit, our work to combat extreme polarization through civil and respectful debate is generously funded by listeners like you, the Rosencrantz Foundation, and friends of Intelligence Squared. Robert Rosencrantz is our chairman, Clea Connor is CEO, David Ariosto is head of editorial, Julia Melfi, Shea O'Mara, and Marlette Sandoval are our producers. Damon Whittemore is our radio producer, and I'm your host, John Donvan. We'll see you next time.